We are live, but it's not on my picture, Neil. I know we have a lag. All right, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where we talk everything mental health and substance abuse, and this is before we turn the live mics on. So you will get a different show. This is before the show, really. Every week on Thursdays at about 6:15 or thereafter, we fire up the mics, and it's a good place to join us. John Pope gets to hang out with us.
Yes.
I haven't talked to you a lot lately, man.
No.
Where you been? What have you been doing?
Well, I've just had a very busy week.
Have you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This still hasn't started.
This is, yeah. It's been busy at my church.
Refresh your page.
Will. It's been oh, there it is.
Been busy at church, you said?
Been busy at church, right. So.
And then Miss Victoria Pendergrass is exploring
Hi,
the church
y'all.
activities.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about empathy today. This was your idea, Victoria.
Yeah, kind of was. You know?
So are you prepared to introduce the topic?
I can read off the paper that you gave us, yeah.
Oh, no.
No shit.
What were you interested in this topic? How did this come
yeah,
up in
okay.
your mind?
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
come
So
on,
this
give us
topic came up
something.
because I work with a lot of kids, which I've talked about before. I don't only work with kids, but I do work with
I know
a
you
lot of
say that.
kids.
You gotta be clear about that. It's like
Yeah.
25% of your caseload, but 75 not.
Right, yeah. It's just, I say that just because usually all the kids.
You're used to it from
and
before.
plus all the kids that come to Metrolina all get sent to me
Yeah.
because
Oh, yeah.
y'all's
Yeah.
schedules are full, so like they get sent to me anyways. But anyways, yeah. So I experience a lot of times with kids, or specifically with parents who express concerns about their kids' lack of empathy or lack of ability to show empathy towards others. And that tends to be a concern of parents. And so, yeah, that's why I kind of brought it up to you the other day or yesterday.
Yeah, it was a good thing. I looked at it last night and made a flow for us. So that's what we're going to be talking about. What did I actually title it? Empathy, Have We Lost It? Episode 284.
284.
Yep.
Wow.
You guys ready to fire up, Neil? All right, let's do this. Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes on the 15th of August. And we're going to be talking about empathy today. The title, Empathy, Have We Lost It, is what's on the docket with our panel. Miss Victoria Pendergrass, how
Yeah.
are you?
I'm doing well.
All right, good. And Mr. John Pope, the Pope. How
The
are you?
Pope, Pachi Bonum.
Pachi bum?
Bonum.
Did you just call yourself a bum?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Come
I
on,
did.
what's up with
I
that?
was saying good peace
Good peace is Pachi
in Latin.
bonum?
Yes, in Latin. But you're from Catholic background.
A long time ago, brother, and I didn't sit with Latin masses.
And
I
I'm
don't know what I did
mispronouncing
there.
it probably. And so a priest is probably going,
Oh, he screwed that up.
yeah.
All right, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get insights directly from a panel of therapists in your car or home. But no, it's not to deliver therapy services in any way. This is a show on empathy, and the three questions that we're going to really bang around are: what is empathy? What are factors in life and society that affect levels of empathy? And how do you build empathy? Because, a little foreshadowing, it might be a skill that you have to build. And that's just a thought
For
of
some
mine.
people.
For some people. Well, for some people, that's an interesting point. We're not into discussion yet.
Okay.
Subscribe, click the buttons. If you like our content, we really need your help. John,
5 stars.
make it clear.
Make it absolutely clear to make 5 stars.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5, not 4. Yeah.
Not 4,
Okay.
5.
No, it really is a big deal. It helps us out. If you click on the subscribe button, tell a friend. We didn't get any new YouTube subscribers that we know of this week, so no one to shout out to. But 5 stars is important. Contact through therapisteyes.com. Finally, this is the human emotional experience, which we endeavor to figure out together. So you were talking about before the live mics came on
Yeah.
the YouTube Live. This was your genesis of an idea for a show.
Kind of, yeah.
Usually when you have an idea, you do the show prep, though. What's up with that?
I didn't want to.
Ouch!
It'd be a very short episode if I did the prep.
Come
You would still be
on.
y'all would still be carrying us most of the way through.
You have an interesting perspective, though, that made you think about this. With the kids
Yeah.
and-
So I work with kids as well as adults, and sometimes happens with adults, but a lot of times what happens with parents of children that I see is they will express concerns that they feel like their child or children uh like lack ability to show empathy towards others, or don't appear to have much empathy when interacting with other people, whether it be family members, friends, the parents
So you
themselves.
found this as a common concern.
Yeah, I don't have. It's not like it's just one kid that I see. It kind of happens.
Yeah.
And working in the school system.
I mean, I'm impressed with that, honestly, because I've never really noticed that working with kids. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't.
Well, I mean,
it
did happen. It made me think of it recently because I had a kid last week whose parent brought that up. Was like, yeah, and I was like, that's kind of like that's not the first time that's happened. Yeah,
glad I asked you because it's a good topic that we didn't have. I didn't really have listed, but. John, let me just open it up to you.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Maybe go ahead. I'm joking.
Well, this crew needs some juice today,
yes.
Neil. Can you go get us some coffee? I tried to go get some coffee or something, and the coffee shop was closed.
Oh, my goodness.
It was closed, John. No, I didn't go to your Dunkin's, though. I should have went to Dunkin'.
Yes.
I went to the nice one down the street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they didn't have anything.
Yeah.
So, do we need to turn the mics off and do some jumping jacks or something?
No, we're fine. We're fine. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go through it.
So tell us about empathy, John.
Well, empathy is...
I'm curious what you see with this topic, honestly.
Well, one of the things in terms of our perspective as therapists, empathy is one of our, Carl Rogers, who's father of basically of a school of thought of counseling, which is person-centered or client-centered.
Right.
That is one of the core conditions in order to be a good therapist.
You have to have empathy.
You have to have empathy.
Interesting.
Now,
okay, that's true. I heard that. I didn't think about that.
That's core conditions, and so it's empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard.
Okay.
Okay. And you have to have all those three elements, which contribute to empathy. My thing is that I noticed that you've taken your research from Scientific American.
Okay, you noticed that? Yeah.
Yes, I did. And the thing is that Scientific American is something that would believe very strongly in evidence-based aspects. And how does one measure empathy?
So I got a good article.
You got a good article.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were you afraid that he was going to take that the other direction and he was going to be
actually,
like, wrong, wrong article?
No. And the thing is that I think that in terms of what we can be as therapists is to be authentic and to be empathetic, and we can model empathy, particularly Victoria with the children who seem to be lacking empathy.
Sometimes, not all.
But that's also a developmental issue, isn't it?
I think it really is more so for kids. I think that's why I've never really, in all my years with kids, focused on that as a main concern. I guess if parents brought it to me, I was kind of like, well, they're kids, so I just started talking about parenting stuff.
Yeah, I think sometimes the concern is more like as the kids get more
teenagers
when they're
they're not gonna
12, 13, and 14 or older.
Well, teenagers have those skills.
Right.
I don't think I got them until I was like 35.
They're going to be empathetic. I mean, they're going to not be empathetic. They're
right, yeah. And I do think that sometimes it does require a little bit of like psychoeducation for the parents.
Yeah.
And like understanding that like that's sometimes normal depending on the kid's age and like, as long, like.
So let's get into this with what this is, because I think that the listening audience, have a lot of confusion or curiosity really about what, if we get in the weeds, is. And I say that because, the Scientific American link that we have in the article, Neil, make sure we have that up for you. It really laid it out, I think, when they said, quote, and I'm going to read, I rarely do, but when lay people are surveyed on how they define empathy, the range of answers is wide as well. Some people think empathy is a feeling. Others focus on what a person does or says. Some think it's being good at reading someone's nonverbal cues, while others include the mental orientation of putting oneself in someone's shoes. Still others see empathy as the ability or effort to imagine others' feelings, or as just feeling connected or relating to somebody. Some think it's a moral stance to be concerned about other people's welfare and a desire to help them out. Sometimes it seems like empathy is just another way of saying, well, being a nice and decent person. So actions, feelings, perspectives, motives, values, all of these are, quote, empathy according to someone. I just thought that was pretty freaking broad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Very broad.
Yeah, that covers a lot of different things.
Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to use that till I was perusing the article, and I went back up and how they introduced the topic and stuff, and I was like, dude, do people think all of those things about empathy?
That's why I think Rogers' definition is better, Carl Rogers, because it also brings in the aspect of congruency, transparency, authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is an aspect. And so you could have this, it seems like you're throwing in everything, including the kitchen sink with this definition.
Right.
So I think it has to be
Well,
narrow.
this wasn't their definition, just to be clear.
These
The
are
article-
people's
Just what other-
definition.
yeah.
People's definition, yeah. There are multiple factors, and many people they talked to were saying these things about the concept. You know, what it is to them.
So then do you want to give like a more clear and device?
So ChatGPT, like, you know, they go understanding and sharing.
Well,
feelings
that's
with
right.
another
We're got a
person.
computer to make our
to make a
definition.
definition of it.
I mean,
empathy.
AI is amazing,
This
John.
is empathy.
Empathy is understanding
Does
and
not
sharing
compute.
the feelings of another person. Now we just lost half the audience, John. Thanks for that.
Yeah, sorry.
And she just snorted. Google is a being aware of and sharing other person's feelings, experiences, and emotions. I mean, I think that's gets to, you know, Carl Rogers was talking to therapy people about how to do a good service, which I think that he's targeting a lot of things. Can we even make empathy simpler by these kind of concepts than what he might have been thinking? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so, but I really do think that empathy is the willingness, at least in my mind, the willingness to go to the deepest corners of the person that you're relating to. In other words, that they can feel that they're not going to be rejected by you. And so I know, again, that's more of an active thing, and so I believe empathy is an action. You know, in other words, you can't. I think empathy is something that has to be learned, practiced.
Okay, now I was going to ask you that. So you say empathy is something that you learned and practiced. Do you see it as a skill? You see it as an action?
Well, then we would talk about therapy there, wouldn't we? As
What do you
a
mean?
skill. As therapist,
Yeah.
yeah,
It has to be
Okay.
a skill.
it has to be a skill.
Well, okay. Is it a skill or a condition? I guess, you know. I mean, because we have other things like, you know, transparency. I mean, that's not a skill. That's you're willing to be transparent or not.
You don't think
Genuine.
you have to practice at that?
Well, thank you, John. You're absolutely on point. I agree. I mean, I think it's a skill.
Yeah.
I think it's purely skillful in a lot of ways, rather than a lot of the.
I would like it to be automatically. I think there's a
be
question:
great.
would you think in terms of the nature of people that we are naturally transparent and naturally empathetic? I'm not.
I don't know if that's a nature thing from the
Yeah.
tabula rosa thing or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I almost see it as thinking back to my time in grad school, how I remember, and this might not be specifically towards empathy, but I remember like professors making comments or statements about how, like, and I guess this applies for any job, but that like some people are more naturally like good at being a therapist. Like they're just naturally good at being a therapist, whereas other people have to work a little bit harder to become a good therapist. And so
Yeah,
I don't know if
particularly-
empathy is like along those same lines
think
where
it
like
is.
well, maybe it's still a skill that's learned, but for some people it comes a lot easier to them than other people who have to like work a little bit harder at being like purposely being empathetic.
So
like
that brings up another interesting component.
Okay.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, there are limitations that we have. We're going to talk about them
Okay.
clinically here tonight a little bit, but you're right. People have different starting spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for some reason we're talking about therapists today, but that's cool because we could use.
But
it that
that's
way.
through a therapist's eyes.
Well, this is true. This is true.
That's my fault. So
no, you're on point.
that yeah.
The thing of it is it fair to say that a therapist would start out if you took 100 therapists, there would be different starting spots with this skill, and
Well, yeah.
some and some have limitations, because I'm wondering, can you empathize with things that you just don't understand? Because if you look at the definition, right, sharing other person's feelings and experiences and emotions, being aware of and sharing. If you're not aware, I mean, therapists spend a lot of time, I think, in the first several years of practice getting aware of, putting yourself in people's shoes. But I've spent a lot of time doing that, and it took a while to be able to get some understanding of some things.
Well,
Does that make sense?
it's a lifelong process. I think
Yeah.
that's not just something that therapists automatically have, or that they're the only ones that do this. And so I wasn't trying to say that it was just therapists
Well, obviously,
through
yeah,
that.
everyone
But
listening.
there's a point that maybe we as therapists, if we work on our own selves and are authentic and transparent, that we will be able to help others become more authentic and transparent and empathetic.
I
in
love
their
your
lives.
modeling on concept there, because there really is, sadly, some very seriously modeled deficits in people's lives for this. Think of substance abuse families, or dealing with levels of toxicity or abusive relationships, or all sorts of situations. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but you're not really having a good starting block in that, are you?
No, you're not. And I'm thinking in terms of the way our everything is fragmented in our society now, and we don't have institutions that would encourage the development of
We're going to talk a
empathetic
lot
behavior.
about that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk a lot about that, because I think there's a lot of factors that do go into this. So this was interesting, though. I hadn't really thought of this, guys, that it was broken down into different types of empathy. You ever heard or thought of the different types of empathy?
This
I
is
can see it.
That was you could see it?
yeah, but I hadn't.
Oh, you
I
see it
could-
on the sheet, yeah. But
Well, I mean, yeah, but never mind. Just keep.
You're
I
not
haven't
surprised.
thought
I'm
in,
not
in
surprised,
those
yeah.
terms.
Yeah.
I've not thought in those terms before, but
I haven't either at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they laid it out in a way that I thought was kind of interesting. Cognitive empathy. So that's the ability to understand someone else's perspective or mental state. So you empathize with cognition. I get what you're thinking. I get how you see that way. I understand your perspective. Like, that's empathizing, cognitive empathy, I guess.
Is that from this essay, Scientific American?
I'm not sure
article?
where I got this, actually.
Okay.
I blended it all together, I think.
Okay.
And then there's emotional empathy, which is the ability to share the feelings, of yours with others and others with you. So the emotional empathy is on the emotional level. And then lastly, the compassionate empathy, which is going beyond understanding, maybe like you said, John, to all corners of a person, and really feeling and taking action to help them. So you have an empathetic compassion to be in their world and to be helpful.
Well, that's kind of in a similar. I guess it's like Fowler's stages of development in terms of moral development. Is
I do not know Fowler's stages of
well,
moral
there's
development.
okay. Well, let me say this. Okay, I think there's there is the cognitive empathy, which I think we are introduced to primarily
Pretty early, yeah.
pretty early, okay. And then the emotional empathy, and I think in terms of people developmentally going through high school and having their hearts crushed and ripped out of their chest. And,
Ouch.
yeah,
That sucks.
yeah, but and
you
what
get
you
learn.
do is your heart grows back,
Yep.
and you become stronger.
Yeah.
And then the compassionate empathy is a higher stage. And I think you have to have all three.
In order to try to practice, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
practice or be a human being.
A decent human being.
Decent human being.
Well, that's part of what they, I mean, all of these facets were in lay people being asked. Let me throw another angle into this discussion that recently, probably should get the show number, Neil. I didn't get that last night, but the Emotional Intelligence Show, right?
Oh, yeah.
We spent a lot of time talking about emotional intelligence and how that operates. Is it fair to say that you might need a higher level of emotional intelligence in order to be on a higher level of empathetic skills?
For sure. I would say so.
Right? I mean, this has a lot to do with emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How so, I guess? How do you see that? We'd spent a whole time talking about
Yeah, I don't know. It
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And
it almost seems so obvious to me that I'm not quite sure how to explain
Right?
how it would be. I guess sorry, it's a gnat.
Okay, the YouTube fandom is worried about what's wrong with Victoria right now. She just stopped talking in mid-sentence and is
Anyways.
swatting a gnat.
But I think it's just that
Come on.
in order to I don't know, I guess in order to know what empathy is and how to express it or show it or feel it, you would have to have a certain level of emotional intelligence. It just seems so basic. I don't know how to explain it.
I love when I catch you flat-footed. Because I'm a little flat-footed as well. I'm not going to deny. John, save us. How does emotional intelligence and empathy kind of combine together or work together?
Correlate.
Correlate is a great word.
Again, I think that emotional intelligence is you can have high intellectual intelligence and not have a very strong emotional intelligence, and so
Therefore, very poor empathy.
very poor empathy. And I think that's what you get the stereotypes in the movies and in books about the brilliant scientist who doesn't understand, or the brilliant politician doesn't understand what humanity's about, or their own humanity. So I think empathy is that special sauce, basically. That
I love it.
it's our humanness, our humanity, and the more empathetic you are, the more, in a sense, that you become aware of your own humanity and that we're all in this together, shared experience.
I love that, John, honestly, because I think that you're really on point there with the idea that, look, we have a lot of challenges in dealing with ourselves mentally and emotionally, and part of what we do together to overcome those challenges is really connect, and it gets to the essence of what makes us human. And humans are relational creatures. We are not isolative creatures, and so we have built-in skills. We have built-in neurology. We have built-in neurons, literally like mirroring neurons. That's a whole thing. And it's all built on how we are connecting with each other. And so I would say it's a core piece of being a human, but it's one that I don't think that we really have our fingers put on. And certainly if we don't have our fingers put on, we can't practice it and be purposeful about being empathetic. I know it's a lot.
I
but-
agree.
No, I agree too.
Now, and I'm wondering if that's an area of some real research that we could do more in that area. Is to say how do we increase empathetic behavior? How do we in ourselves, but with others, in families, in schools, and in our society? Because I think one of the questions that we're dealing with right now and our struggles is that we're so bifurcated as a society. We're so torn apart.
Right. It's
And
brutal
It is brutal.
on human relationships, especially, and thus the very humanistic nature
There's-
of us as a people.
And there's a lot of despair going on. I'm thinking in terms of in our own beautiful Gaston County, we have a very high suicide rate amongst middle-aged men and teenagers. And why is that? And I think it's because people live at a cognitive dissonance. Basically, they're seeing, they're having these feelings, their emotions, and they don't know how to express them. They don't know who they can trust and who they can rely on. They need somebody that's empathetic that would be able to help bring them back.
Empathetic or sympathetic?
Empathetic.
You said sympathetic right there, and you might be in my head. I may have zipped that at you.
Well, I thought I said empathetic. But
yeah, but you said sympathetic, and what's interesting is I think there's another piece. Like, I love what you're talking about, and it transitions nicely to, Neil's kind of point before we turn the mics on. He's like, are you going to talk about the difference between empathy and sympathy? Because people get confused about that.
Yeah.
Because they're not the same thing.
They're not the difference, because we can have the great Rolling Stones song, Sympathy for the Devil. We don't say empathy for the devil.
Oh, well, there you go.
There.
That really lays it out actually pretty well.
As I say, that's
mic
good.
drop on that.
Yeah.
That is a very different perspective. But let's lay it out, Victoria. Maybe you seem to be up on that. How is that different, particularly with what he just said? Like, how empathy and sympathy?
Well, like, sympathy is just like feeling bad for someone. At least how I see it. Like, I feel like you lost a loved one. I feel bad for you. I have sympathy for you. Like, but empathy is more like kind of how we said in the beginning, like having that understanding and like
you get me.
The sharing of the feelings of like, okay, I get it. Like, I actually know, what you could be feeling like because I've been there. Or if I haven't been there, then I can at least get to some sort of understanding of like how difficult it might be, what you might be feeling, instead of just like, oh, well, I feel bad for you. Like, I'm sorry.
Okay. So there's an experiential aspect of empathy.
Right, John. That's what I was really getting at. I feel like, I'm listening to you with the humanistic perspective that you're talking about empathizing with people, and that's what makes us human. And I'm thinking mirroring neurons, and we need more research and stuff. There's a whole lot more interrelatedness, maybe, Neil, to answer your original question, right? Like, there's with empathy, there's a whole lot of experiencing together and relating together and understanding together with people. With sympathy, I see this as just you're offering your
like
compassion,
condolences or something,
and that's it. There's not a lot of interaction with that.
And I guess that's the definition. I mean, the types of empathy is cognitive empathy, and I would posit that maybe that's more sympathy than.
That's a good point. I like that. I could see that. I could go with that, because you really are cognitively offering, some difference in somebody's experience so that they very much.
I'm going down. I'm slouching.
We're laughing at John. Neil has to fix the microphone every now and again. He kind of gets in his chair and just sort of slowly.
It's a very slouchable couch.
It's like the earth and seep.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
There you go. It's moving.
That's the wrong type of song, though.
The definition I looked up on my phone here: feel or express sympathy. Okay, that's sympathize, right? To feel sorry for someone who is in a bad situation. That's what it means to sympathize. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
To feel sympathy
Sucks
for
for
someone
you.
because you understand that person's problems. I mean, it's like, there's so much more going on with empathy.
Right.
Empathy
And
is
see,
your.
I think,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, no. I think that's why it requires a certain level of emotional intelligence.
Back to
Because
that, right.
almost anyone can have sympathy for someone, regardless of their emotional intelligence. But I do feel like kind of what we were hinting at and talking about before that.
Yeah. You get your car stuck in the mud and somebody says, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's sympathy. Okay. And you may actually feel
Yeah,
think
you,
that.
you will feel
Okay,
it.
but if you have empathy, you're on there helping that person push their car out of the mud.
Because they've been in a similar situation, or they
And you
can understand the
understand.
frustration of,
I am
okay,
with. We are together.
right, yeah.
You're journeying with that person in their experience, and so when somebody, for example, dies, and there's a family, and let's say the preacher comes over. Well, the preacher, a 26-year-old or 25-year-old preacher, of which I was at one time, it was really, long time ago. It was very hard for me to empathize because I hadn't had a lot of loss.
Right. That's a big piece of it.
But when a whole bunch of people started dying in my family, I started understanding. So if it wasn't just the nice words that I said, it was I could actually authentically grieve with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I'll make a bold statement. I mean, this is why one of the I think we have to be honest about what our ability is. Such as the one thing that I really feel like you can't understand if you haven't experienced it, and I know it's going to be upsetting to a lot of people, but if you're not a parent, it's really hard to be able to empathize with that. You know, I would not want to meet with a therapist for myself unless they had that experience, honestly. Because
We've talked about
Victoria
this.
and I have talked about it because it's just such a core thing in my life that I don't believe you can really empathize with me, which is such a key part of talking to you. Now, I may be mistaken about that. That may not be a fair statement. You could probably pick me apart for that, but that is the way that I feel and the way I see it. And so somebody may feel that way, which is why in our therapy world, it is very okay to make those statements and if you have those concerns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but we work hard to be able to create empathy, as you say, John. So I don't know.
And we also do those things or create opportunities for that, like through continuing education and things like that. So we become more knowledgeable about it so that we can be a little bit more empathetic towards experiences that we maybe not have directly experienced in our life, but maybe something that our clients have experienced that we'll be able to like relate to them on.
Yeah.
Or have that understanding.
Just saying this is dangerous because you might feel like you're the only person that has this experience. And honestly, I pointed out one with being a parent or not being a parent. There are very few things that you can't get to a place of empathy with.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think that people oftentimes feeling alone feel like other people cannot understand them. And I'm suggesting very much that they absolutely can.
Right.
John, am I on dangerous ground? What are you thinking? I'm curious about your tap in your mind.
No, I don't think you're on dangerous ground at all.
Yeah.
So
the whole parent thing?
The whole parent thing, yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Okay, we've talked about this as far as like race.
A lot of things, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that like, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I think you're fine with saying that because I think people do have, whether it's race, whether it's parenthood, whether it's other like life experiences, then I think like, yeah, especially in therapy, or like specifically, like I could see how you would be apprehensive about like your therapist having empathy towards, you know,
the issues of raising a child.
Yeah. Or even anything. Like if I have a black woman that comes into my office, yes, we're both women, but like my life experiences are probably quite different than hers. Sure. Maybe.
Yeah, and I think the assurance
I think there can be, even with that, you know, is this therapist going to really be able to understand the things that I've gone through in my life or the things that I experience on a day-to-day basis and
so
the
thing that I want to really maybe highlight it and maybe we'll move on is, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into being able to do that. I mean, all of the theories we talked about, modalities recently. John, you're talking about a new one that we didn't even talk about during that show. You know, the experience, the trainings, the CEUs that you talked about, the ongoing research that we have. Like, we put a lot of effort into being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes, even me as a man understanding, you know, women's issues. I just had an involved conversation this afternoon that sort of broke my heart with a woman parts thing that somebody's struggling with. And I was able to really be there with them. So there's a lot that goes into this, and you too, if you become purposeful, can put effort into
Again,
this.
it's purposeful
Right.
and intentionality, and it's willing to allow yourself to go places that that you might
Be
have some,
uncomfortable.
be uncomfortable. Yeah, go outside your comfort level
Yeah. To be with the person you're
to be
relating
with
to.
the person. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into some factors. This is some good stuff, man. We should have. This is a longer conversation than I thought
It is.
that we might have. Yeah, because honestly, even as I'm talking about it, it's kind of like there's a lot that goes into this whole idea that we live with constantly, right? So I thought this was interesting insofar as factors. This is what caught me with that article. Again, I think I'm just going to quote it. America is a country in deep pain. I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. That's what caught my eye. The coronavirus pandemic, racial injustice, economic insecurity, political polarization, misinformation, and general daily uncertainty dominate our lives to the point that many people are barely able to cope. And I think that's egocentric for us to think that's just in America, because I see that listeners all around the world are talking about and experiencing all sorts of despair and distress, as John, I think you were talking about. We know, science tells us, anxiety rates of dysfunction are high. Depression is raging. Suicide rates, not just among military or police personnel, among teenage girls and, you say, middle-aged boys. I didn't even know that.
Right.
Like, there's a lot going on out there, and in that kind of a mental space, oh boy, how easy is it to be empathetic?
And the way I know that is, by the way, and it's anecdotal, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it is generalizable, but there was that through first responders that I work with, they just talk about, these guys, they're this age, and they're in their 40s and 50s, and there's
something's going on.
Something's going on, and they have everything, and yet they
have nothing.
You
didn't hear my catch though. My at the end there with the question is, if we're in these states of despair, how then difficult is it to be empathetic? Isn't that something? When despair is up, when anxiety is up, when depression is up, loneliness, an epidemic of loneliness, how does that affect, as a group, the group's ability to be empathetic? And
So that's empathy fatigue, huh? Is that what I'm...
There's a phrase.
Yeah.
You just created a term.
Yeah,
Well,
because we talk about compassion fatigue, but this is empathy.
Well, if we have, and also like to add on top of that, we're very, especially here in America, we're very like individualistic type people.
Yeah.
Like we don't really think of the whole group a lot of times. We just think of ourselves.
A little self-absorbed over here in this part of the world.
Yeah.
And we're very good at saying we're self-absorbed.
Oh, yeah, it's fine, right? I know.
I
that's
think
it.
like that with all this other stuff that you mentioned on top of it. Yeah. Like if I have all this crap going on in my life, high anxiety, high depression, like all these things, then I may not be able to put forth as much energy and effort towards being empathetic towards other, because I got my own crap to deal with.
Yeah. And
like
if that's
when I get home,
intently,
and then that's in the forefront of my brain. Oh my gosh, when I get home, I got to do this, I got to do that. When I get to work, I got to do this, I got to do that. And then I'm not thinking about like, the person that's like,
how do I dial into this person?
Yeah, or like this person that's on the side of the road, like I don't even see them, because that needs help with their car, because I'm so like focused on like, okay,
consume.
Yeah, what am I doing at my next destination, while
John,
also like not wrecking my car?
Yeah,
on the way there.
Also, John, you had thoughts though?
Well, yeah, I was thinking that. That there's a risk with being empathetic, and by that, you mentioned that we hear these horror stories about you stop and help somebody and they're going to assault you or rob
Not alive you.
Unalive you,
you.
and that could be a real issue. But the thing also is that if you are empathetic and you are intentionally so, you might have to change your outlook. You might have to change your prejudices. You might have to stretch,
Ooh.
grow out of your.
How dare you say I have to challenge my beliefs to be empathetic with somebody else?
Yeah,
We're independent, right, Victoria?
yeah.
I'm
That's
being,
right.
I'm being sarcastic here.
Well, and that was by the way, that's been going on for forever in our country, at least in my long.
Yeah, no, I
life
listened to
so far.
enough true crime podcasts to know that's happens a lot.
Yeah.
But-
All right, here's a darling of our conversation, I'm sure. If you start
Mm-hmm.
thinking about social media and technology,
It's-
we haven't had a good impact conversation on social media and technology in a little while. We've kind of avoided it because I felt like it comes up a lot. But
Well, I
It
bring
always
it.
comes
I
up in
bring
every
it.
podcast topic we talk about.
what's that?
I said it almost comes up in every episode.
Yeah, and I shut it down because
It's
I'm like, I
like-
don't.
And
I'm
that's-
afraid to.
That's
but,
me.
But how
does
do you have a conversation about empathy, losing empathy, having challenges to empathy, and not dig deep, hard into the realities of
It's
social
just
media?
that we have so
technology?
much information that's thrown at us and given to us, and
exhausting.
yet it's exhausting. And yet that is an area that we seem to be having. It should make us this, if one followed it logically. It should make us more empathetic. Everybody's our brother and sister. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony.
Right.
And so, but we don't. We do just the opposite. We polarize. We go into tribalism. What do you think?
Yeah, sorry, keep talking.
I did that. I did that on purpose. So,
What? My brother called me, and he never calls me, so I'm texting him back real quick to make sure everything's
so,
okay.
so, but I think that's something that we do. Is it not more challenging that to be empathetic now and authentic and transparent in a world in which we're swamped with information, and it's hard to figure out? We seem to be drowning in it, and therefore we do just the opposite. We try to save ourselves.
True story that I just heard last night. There was a guy that I met. He works with River Keepers. Hey, by the way, man, nice to meet you. Shout out to you. We're going to be talking soon because I think I'd like to have him on the show. And he told me a story about his son who went on some sort of trip. I don't know. It was a camping trip or some sort of event or something kind of going on. And, he went to this week-long deal or 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks kind of deal. It was a big event for this kid's life. And, they're reestablishing, reconnecting, and they're just having a conversation. Tell us about your time, how'd it go? And his dad asked him, he said, so I'm curious, what was the coolest thing or the funnest thing about, this experience that you had? Do you know what this little 18-year-old said?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I didn't have my phone the whole time. That is what he said. I'm telling you, John, I am getting very hopeful about the world's being saved by Generation Z.
Well, I
really
agree
am.
with you. I read
Gen
an
Z or
article.
Gen Alpha?
Gen whatever.
Alpha.
Alpha's the youngest one.
Oh dear God.
They're
Z.
intentionally not using their phone,
Right.
which
Right.
is wonderful.
Right.
Which also, as a parent of a young child, makes me nervous. Like, how am I supposed to get in contact with my kid if he needs me?
Oh my God. Deal with
Have
your
one of
freaking
those little
parent fear.
watches that they
No,
can
deal
wear.
with yourself, John. I'm going a different direction with this one. No, you deal with yourself. You calm yourself down. You have positive thinking in your own head, and you let this kid experience life.
we call the
we're not,
landline.
so we're not suffocating this kid. Yeah, yes, boy. That we just got a show topic.
I was talking to my mother, who is of a mature age,
Oh yes.
and she said she worried about us, but we would go up in the mountains and
Yes.
and mess around and all that, and she had to pray sometimes that we didn't fall into a mine shaft or any, because I'm from southeastern Kentucky where there's a lot of coal mining.
Oh yeah. I know
But-
the area well.
But that was, you're West Virginian, you
Right.
know that. So, but part of that is also trusting someone, and maybe that might be helpful, is to be able to
developing trust.
developing
faith.
trust and faith, and knowing, let's say, that significant other, that parent or partner trust you? And
It's scary, though, Victoria. I mean, we have gotten so attached to these tools
Right.
that has fundamentally changed the way that we relate. And unfortunately, I feel like in a lot of ways being, negative. So you might be fearful of how am I going to track my kid or keep him safe
no, I
or
mean,
know
I
where
know I
he's
say
at.
that, but we'd figure it out.
You'll
It'll be
figure it out.
fine.
But it's early on. I mean, the thing that I think I would say is that even early on, the first few years of life, you begin to realize like you're not going to be able to prevent this kid's scraped knee, and therefore you
Yeah.
really end up connecting more, empathizing more. Sharing life experiences together more because you feel it more. If I just sit there and look at my kid on a family app, Life 360 was one of the first ones, and I check on him where he's at, good. Check on him again 2 hours later, good. Check him on again maybe an hour later because it's the first time he's been away for 8 hours. Well, you kind of already know what's going on. So are you connected to him?
Yeah.
Or what happens in that scenario when you have had zero contact for those 8 hours? They come home. Hey, now tell me about where you were. Tell me about what you did.
Same thing
Tell
in
me about
relationships.
how things went. Right?
If I text my husband throughout the day, every time something happens throughout my day, and he tells me every time something
There you
happens
go.
throughout his day
Right.
in text message, then when we get home and like we're having dinner together or we're, sitting on the couch watching TV, like
There's no empathy.
there is no tell me about your day. Yeah.
There's no
like,
connection.
oh my
You're
gosh, you
right.
wouldn't guess what happened to me today, and I get like,
I didn't think about it that way, but that's brilliant. And that's absolutely a fundamental fabric of our life.
yeah. So like I usually, unless it's like I need something from my husband, like right then and there, like I'm going to the grocery store. Hey, do we need anything? Kind of situation.
Maybe some
like,
information. Oh, okay,
yeah.
too soon.
Like then we don't really like text and talk throughout the day. Like
Yeah.
he might send me a TikTok and I might send him a TikTok or something that I think he would laugh at. But other than that, like and I wouldn't necessarily say, I think it's half intentional, half just because we work obviously throughout the day, so we don't necessarily
Right.
have time. But I do think part of it's intentional, at least from my side. I don't know about his, but from my side, because then we have more to talk about, like at home,
Right.
which is hilarious for us because it's not like we can go home and talk about our clients, but it does at least, even if other things happen throughout my day,
And no, we don't talk about our clients.
No, yeah, no,
That's
we don't.
right.
We try not. We definitely not. I mean, we hold all those
That's,
things in
my
strong
wife
confidence,
says, "Well, how was your day?"
but yeah.
And I just say, "Well, I saw a bunch of people."
Yeah, I usually just talk about how many people I saw.
Yeah. Well,
So I say
there's-
that it was exhausting.
Yeah.
or it
Exactly.
was
How were you feeling? What did
exhilarating.
you go through? What did you have for lunch?
But
what
I
was
get
your
what you're
drive
saying.
home like?
It's that opportunity to connect. If I get together with my friends and all we do is sit around and like play on our phones, which I get sometimes that's nice. I don't necessarily need to talk to you all the time, but like you're missing out on that connectedness of like shared experiences and
Yeah, this technology thing is prevalent in our lives, and I never really thought about it that way, but routinely texting somebody decreases your level of empathy with each other. I think that's
Yes.
given our conversation, that's a true statement I wouldn't have thought before today.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would not have thought that before.
It's
our
like an
conversation.
inverse. In other
It's
words,
directly inverted.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, it's inverted.
yeah.
I'll go another further point with this insofar as I think a discussion point. I've often maintained I'm upsetting our therapy people today maybe from what I said before, but I have a developing concern about how medical field is getting stuck into a virtual reality realm that I don't think is best practice. That's my bold statement here. I feel like best practice. We used to talk about best practice a lot. What's the best way to do therapy? What's the best way to deliver a service? How do you
I
do
hadn't
this?
heard that term in about 10 years.
Has it been 10 years? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
We
been-
used to talk about that a
Yeah,
lot.
they would talk about it when I was in grad school.
In grad school, you heard best practice, yeah. Well, I believe best practice is face-to-face therapy.
Mhm.
I mean, I do. I hate that. Upset people. I know that we love working from home, and a few people love my offering virtual, which I do. I have for a long time, actually, way before COVID. Many years I would do some virtual stuff, but I feel like it's a step down. So let's be clear: face to face is best practice. There's a step down to video conferencing. I used to think there was a big step down to doing phone sessions where I wouldn't do it. I was opposed, and coronavirus taught me. The pandemic taught me that phone sessions are very effective. I was wildly surprised by that. I will do just phone sessions.
But maybe
now.
part of that also was the fact that we were so stressed out with coronavirus that we were more willing to.
Well, yeah,
and I agree with
more
you. By
willing
the way,
to experiment, but
yeah.
I think it's always been effective. I just didn't know it. I'll own that.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, and I can see where you're relating that into also like the medical field of like it can get kind of dicey if like especially when it comes to like prescribing medicine and like all these things and you're just going based off like a conversation that we have over video. I can see that you're not like looking at my body in person or touching the thing that I'm saying like, is wrong with me or examining it or
Yeah, I mean, you need physical examination.
Even my psychiatrist, she'll do virtual sessions, but she will not do 2 virtual sessions in a row.
Oh,
so
wow, love that.
If we do a virtual session,
Awesome.
That's fine, but then our
that-
next session has to be in person because then I got to pee in a cup.
I love that. Well, there's that too.
That,
And also so that way, like, she can set eyes on me.
She monitors you of all people with like. Does she not know who she's talking to? What are you talking about? But okay.
By the way, I don't disagree with you at all. I agree with you 100%. And one of which is that I had a doctor that was actually in person, and I don't know what the issue was, but I think it was from her as opposed to me. She wouldn't touch me when we did a physical examination.
Really?
No. I'm going like, come on. You
gotta look at my ears.
You got to look at my ears, up my nose, or stick out your tongue or something. I'd do that, and but she would be like 5 feet away,
Oh,
and
my
so
goodness.
and
Interesting.
yeah.
How do you see the tonsils from 5 feet
Well,
away?
she let things slip. She didn't catch everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Golly. And you know this because
I know this
your body.
my body, yeah. And so
oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get back to hugging people, guys. Touching. Like
With
it's
their
okay.
consent.
Huh?
I said with their consent.
Well, obviously inappropriately, but like I don't know. It's just it's there's a sterilization that's gone on, and it's really affecting human relationships. I'm aware of the time. We got to roll a little bit, guys.
Yeah.
This really is more of a
rolling.
conversation than I thought, because there's cultural and societal shifts as well. Individualization, self-interests. We have this America First thing that's going on because we want to individuate ourselves. People around the world are not wanting to be involved with their neighbors. And I think there's a lot of developments that are shifting. Also, similarly, I hate to do this, but news and media influence, that's a huge part of empathy as well. The bombardment of negative news and fear mongering and fear realities. Like, it's hard to be empathetic nowadays. I do think it's harder to be empathetic than it used to be. Crazy, right?
Yeah, when in fact, when it says if you give them enough information, you give them everything, then they'll become more empathetic. It's not true, people.
It's not true.
Not at all.
It's just not an experiential-based reality. Other factors, what else did I come up with? Overexposure to negative stimuli, decreased face-to-face interactions. That's a big factor. Increased polarization. That's around the world, too, America. This is not an American-only issue.
No, just Great Britain just recently had it.
Hard,
yeah.
We see it in Israel. I mean, it's around the world. It's not just here. So there's a lot of factors that are making it difficult.
For sure.
Let's talk real quickly about mental health factors, and then I want to spend the rest of our time on how do we build this as a skill, right? So we don't need to go down through all 3 of these, but have you thought about different people, Victoria, maybe that come in clinically to your office and how these things really affect their relationships? Because we talk about a person's relationships a lot in therapy.
Well, yeah.
Social support network, social system,
Yeah.
all these cool things. And they're good things, but, how does that they are dealing with clinically affect that you have in their lives? Have you ever thought about that connected to diagnosis and
Oh, like
mental health
someone's lack of empathy or
Right.
and connected. Well, yeah, I mean, like statistically speaking, like people with autism,
It's a biological
yeah,
deficit.
like sometimes depending on the severity
Right.
of the autism, like they just have this inability to have empathy. And yes, sometimes as a therapist, I might pick up on that, and then that could lead me to a autistic diagnosis.
That's a big thing we look for, isn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
or like what, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you need also, you can have all the assessments in the world for autism, but you also have to have that clinical
Yeah.
observation, interaction,
Yeah,
because that's the lack of interaction. So
right. Sociopaths have lack of empathy, sometimes that lack of like affect.
Do you ever work with a sociopath?
I don't believe I have.
Yeah. I don't think I have either.
In my
John, have you ever
experience-
worked with a sociopath?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like when
I was
they
a brig
di-
chaplain.
Like, did you diagnose it, or were they already diagnosed when they came to you?
Well, they murdered somebody and threw him off the fantail of the Enterprise and laughed about it. Just,
Really?
The
Oh.
carrier.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
we talked about it, but
It's a
he was-
fascinating thing. This is something that is very rare. I think I can
Yeah.
honestly say to you, I've never worked with sociopathy, and that's because it is so rare.
Yeah.
Right.
These are folks that, contrary to what you might see on true crime or misperceptions out there, these are folks that really don't have congruent emotional experience to the situation. Don't be confused. They have emotions, but they're just not
They're not
congruent.
congruent.
With this,
to
like
the
laughing
circumstance.
after
And
throwing
that's
someone off
psychopathy.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kicked up a notch with psychopathy. And
Yes.
so,
Sociopathy and psychopathy.
right.
Okay.
So many fun words.
I tell you.
Okay, but yeah, there are more sociopaths than there are
psychopaths.
and that would make
Is
sense.
psychopath an old term, John? I wonder about that
It's
being
an-
interchangeable.
I do think
Is it
in
not
the
interchangeable?
past people have expressed that there are differences between the two.
I wonder.
I can't actually give a.
Okay, well, we're
Answer
going
for
on a
that.
bunny trail,
Yeah.
and but just an honorable mention to, like, these things that people really struggle with.
Right.
When you're struggling with addiction, it consumes your basically your entire spirit, and you're not really dialed into what people around you are experiencing very much. So hypomania, bipolar, just run-of-the-mill depression. Understand that these things, when you're in distress, become harder to really empathize. And that's why you want to get well. You want to be a good parent? Okay, take care of mommy or take care of daddy yourselves.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to more aptly work with people and stuff. So,
Yep.
self-care is non-negotiable for therapists, right? Like, we have to facilitate ourselves. I hate those low-energy days. I have to kind of make sure that I'm up for this,
Yeah.
So there's a lot that you have to be aware of related to specific mental health. I don't want to short that so bad, but I'm just aware of the time. And
That's
we
okay.
just,
I think we're moving on to the bigger part of it, which
Okay.
is like, how do we build it?
how do you build this? This is a skill. This is something that has lots of pressures on. This is something that your internal experience of life, inherently probably with insecurities and anxieties and depression, has pressures on. So how do we build this?
My favorite thing, and I see you listed it on here, active listening.
Did I? Oh, okay.
Active listening skills. We
Oh,
use
boy.
these little nice little things
Tell
that
me.
most of us have attached
Tell
to
me
our
about
head.
it. Let's get a handle on it. Tell
Oh.
me about it.
What is active listening?
But yeah, I mean, I think by active listening, which basically means that you are listening to understand the person that you're talking to, keyword is not listening to respond. You're listening to
So
understand.
you're not thinking ahead.
Right.
Okay, so Victoria's going to stop talking here, listener, and I'm going to be able to say something in a moment. This is going to be great.
Okay.
She's going to stop, and
But
I'm waiting.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Did you stop?
But-
Can I say something?
See,
Shut up.
See, he's,
yeah.
yeah.
But that's what I'm
This
saying.
is what
Yeah.
people do normally. The point that I'm making, Victoria, by interrupting you and
Yeah.
being rude,
Yeah. No. Like I get
is
it.
that's the way we operate. Normal conversations are not empathetic. That's a statement I'll make.
Yeah.
Normal conversations are just waiting for the other person to stop so that you could speak. That is not what we're after here.
And
Sorry.
and we
go
do a
ahead.
lot of this with couples therapy, but that
Yeah.
whole listening to understand what the person is actually saying or what they're trying to express that they're going through. And I think that definitely, like we're saying, is going to help with your empathy skills, because it's going to help you be able to actually hear what the person is saying and be that much closer to understanding, okay, like this is what person is experiencing, and I don't necessarily need to have a response to that.
You can just listen.
Yeah.
The next thing to think about is that we do this in therapy all day long, all the time. It's been mentioned putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, if you want to be a more empathetic person and you're listening to this, you really need to stop and reflect and think about the person that you're close to and what their experience is. Put yourself in their shoes. That inherently grows empathy. What about, John, the next one, you think?
What do you mean the next one?
Compassionate
Compassion.
actions. Does that build empathy?
Oh, okay. Compassionate actions, yes, it does, because by doing that, you share into what that person is undergoing. So let's say if, like Habitat for Humanity, let's give you an example.
Love them. Good shout
Love
out.
them, yeah.
Good shout out. Well, you're actually building a house or a domicile for somebody or a family, and you get to share in their experience, and they get to actually model for themselves to a sense that they have to contribute to their own building as well. And so it's not given to them. Everybody's sharing and doing this together. And so the compassion by actions develops compassion, which develops empathy.
You're together in it.
Together.
So what about mindfulness, Victoria? Does that help build?
Well, yeah, because mindfulness is all about being in the here and now, being in the present. And when you're in the here and now, in the present, you're, again,
With someone.
with other people, sharing in the experiences, having that understanding, and which is going to be able to help increase your empathetic skills.
And I guess I want to say adding also self-reflection. So being mindful about just yourself in the moment frees you up to be able to connect and
Yeah,
share
what can I
and be
learn?
with
What can I
someone
grow?
else.
How can I
Humor.
grow from this? Yeah.
Humor.
Humor is great. I love that. Good addition.
Yeah, because you can step back from yourself.
Humor connects people, doesn't
It
it?
It
Yeah, we
connects
use humor
people.
a lot in time therapy.
It really does. Yeah, you laugh in therapy with me. I'll
Yeah.
tell you. If
Yeah.
you don't laugh at some point with any level of meetings, there's something we've done wrong. Because
Yeah.
it's a huge medicine, isn't it?
Sorry.
And it
No,
connects.
I laugh. I hear you laugh. I
Yeah,
laugh.
oh, you hear me laugh through
Yeah,
the
we
whole
hear
thing.
me hear
Yeah.
Victoria
I
laugh.
hope you
Yeah.
hear me laugh. too.
Yeah.
You're kind of a quiet laugher,
Yeah.
John.
I definitely hear Chris laugh sometimes.
Do you?
Yeah.
I carry. My voice
I
carries.
want to go back too, and that
Okay.
is just that it can be. I think empathy is something that's shared. It can be taught. It can be caught. But I also do think there are some people that are preternaturally empathetic. For example, children with Williams.
Sort of instinctual, you mean?
Yeah, Williams syndrome. Are you familiar with that? It's a
I am not.
chronological. They have an intellectual, because you said developmental delays, they may be more empathetic
Oh,
mindfully.
okay.
Okay.
I did. You're right. Thank you for
So,
that.
so I didn't want to skip that. So,
Right.
but I think that everyone can learn at some level, a fundamental level, to have some empathy. And
You know what made me think about that, John? It was my next door neighbor who has Down syndrome. You know, go Jason, love you, buddy. And he is such. I mean, it's hard to have conversations per se, like you know, with
Because
with
he's
the
so
whole
empathetic?
cognition. No, because he's got Downs pretty strong.
Okay.
But I'm telling you what, his empathy, you could just see him caring about you when you're interacting with him. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful because there's just the simplicity of where he is at is he just wants to be there with you and talk to you. And when I get a Jason hug, it's just it's so genuine. It's wonderful, highly empathetic, but very emotionally delayed. Right?
right.
Yeah.
So what it's just a perspective is, or from a different way of looking at it is, perhaps that is the natural empathy that we may have in us innately.
Innate.
But, but we put up all these barriers and all these walls that go up.
It's funny. This isn't the way the case, but what you just made me think, John, is like, yeah, we have innate ability automatically as humans to connect and to be empathetic, and then we destroy them by putting up all these walls and different barriers and stuff. So the skill sets come in like tearing down our own walls so we can return to being empathetic.
Full circle.
We have to we have to relearn.
We have to relearn in a way. Yeah, you know, we didn't even mention trauma during this conversation, but
Yeah.
you know, you have traumatic life experiences, man, it tears your ability to be empathetic down.
Yeah.
And you have to build that back up.
So then lastly, I think that like another way to improve your empathy is obviously a topic we've hit on is reducing your
the
screen
screen
time.
time reduction reality.
Having those face-to-face
it makes a difference.
in person real life experiences.
I think we squeezed a lot into this conversation.
Yeah, this was a good episode.
Honestly, man. I mean, I didn't realize prepping my brain for this that there would be so much to this topic. I'm going to be honest.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am. Your idea was the bomb. We're going to go a mic drop on that. This was Victoria's show. She killed it. She's on point. Love you, ma'am. Thank you for being here.
Yep.
Sir, we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Stay well. Take
Peace.
care.